Alright, so welcome to your first PHP project. This project is going to be really simple. We will be using PHP and MySQL. Basically, it's just a simple shout box where users can come and see basically just small messages that other people leave, which have the time, the user's name, a message, and then they can add their own message. They can put in their name, let's say, I don't know, Beth, and she can come and say whatever. Hey, what are you guys up to? Okay, and then she can submit, and you can see her message goes right to the top. Alright, so really easy. We do have a little bit of validation. If I try to submit nothing, we get this little error message. So we're going to be using the MySQL API, and we're not going to be using the object-oriented version. I want to use the procedural version just because I want to start really simple. When you use PHP with a database, there's a million different ways to do that. All right, so I just want to start with the simplest, which I think is the MySQL API. MySQL API is deprecated, so we're not going to use that. And then as we move into other projects, we'll take a look at the MySQL object-oriented version. We'll look at PDO, and then we'll look at some frameworks which have their own APIs. So let's get to it. As always, I like to start with UI. Alright, so we're just going to basically create the HTML and the CSS for this. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go to my htdocs. Alright, so we're using XAMPP as a server to parse our PHP. I'm going to change this shout it folder to shout it done. Alright, and then we'll create a new folder called shout it. Alright, so let's create our files. Now, this being the first project, like I said, everything's going to be really simple. We're just going to have a few PHP files and a CSS file. We're not going to do any complicated structures or includes or classes or anything like that. We're just going to have an index file, a process file to process our input, in a database file to connect to our database. Alright, and then a CSS folder. So that's really it. So let's create the CSS folder. Okay, and we'll create index.php. Oh, didn't want a folder, I want a file. Okay, this one will be database. And then this one will be process. Alright, so let's create the style CSS file. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and open index and style. Oh. Get that out of there. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is just paste in an HTML shell. Alright, so we'll give it a title. Alright, so we want to link our CSS file. And right now I'm using Notepad++. And when we get into later projects, when we create more files and folders, I'm going to install an IDE. Most likely it'll be Eclipse, which is really good for PHP development. type. Alright, so there's our CSS file. Alright, so that's all we need in the head. So let's create the body. We're going to have one container div. Okay, and this ID is going to be called container. Alright, and then we're going to have a header. We use the HTML5 header tags, which will just have an H1. And that's just going to say shout it. Shout box. Alright, and then we're going to have div ID shouts, which will encapsulate all the shouts, and they're going to be in list form. Okay, so list, and we're going to give each shout a class of shout. Alright, now I'm just going to put some static content in here for now. Alright, so the first thing we want is the date, and I'm going to put that in a span tag because I want to make it lighter than the rest of the text. Okay, so I'm sorry, not the date, the time. Alright, so I'm just going to put something in there for now, just 10:15 p.m. Alright, actually let's break this up a little. Make this wider. Actually, no, I don't want to break it up because we're going to have a bunch of them. Alright, so after the time, let's take a look at it. Okay, so we'll just have a dash and then the name. And then the message, I think. Yeah. Okay, let's just copy this. What are you guys up to? Alright, so that'll be the format for a shout. I'm just going to copy this a few times. Okay, like I said, we're going to replace that with dynamic content, and then probably the next video. Yeah, so that's good. This div closes the shouts. Alright, so after the shouts, I want the input. So I'm going to create a div, the ID of input. And in here we're going to have a form. Alright, so the method is going to be post. And then the action is going to be where the form is going to be posted to. And that's going to be process.php. Alright, so in the form we'll have an input, text, and we're going to give it a name so that we can use this in process.php of user, and then we'll give it a placeholder, say enter your name. Alright, and then we'll have another input. This will also be text, and this will have a name of message. Alright, now we need our button. We're going to put a line break here because the button, as you can see, is just going to go across the whole. And by the way, this is totally responsive too. If we make this smaller, you can see that it would look good on a mobile device as well. Okay, we have the inputs are set to display block, so they're not squeezed in there. We have a nice scroll bar to see everything, so it's a nice interface, I think. Alright, so input type will be submit, and we're going to give it a name of submit as well. and we get type, name, and let's see, value. Value will be shouted out. Alright, let's also give it a class. Alright, so that actually should do it for the HTML. Let's take a look at it. Alright, so it doesn't look very good. Obviously we need CSS to make this look bearable. Alright, so let's go to the CSS file. And first thing I want to do is do a reset. I want everything to be zeroed out. Margin and padding. Okay, next we'll do the body. And for the body, let's give it a font family of Arial. Okay, font size, I'm going to do 15. Let's see, line height, let's do 1.5 M. And background is going to be a very light gray. Alright, so that's good for body. Next, we'll do the container. Alright, so let's give this a background of dark gray. And we want it to be in the middle, so we'll do a 50 pixel margin on the top and the bottom, and then the left and the right we want to be auto, so that it's set in the middle. And we'll give it an overflow of auto. A width, now we want this to be responsive and flexible, so we're going to do a percentage. Okay, I'm going to do 60%, and minimum height we're going to set to 400 pixels. Alright, so let's check that out. Alright, so we're getting there. Next we'll do the header, the H1 tag. Alright, so the header I want to be white. And font size, let's do 22 pixels. Padding 15 on the top, 0, 10 on the bottom, and 10 on the left. And then we'll give it a border on the bottom of 1 pixel, solid white. Okay, so that looks good. Alright, next let's do this area, which is the shouts. So shouts, we're going to give this a width of 90%. Alright, so it's going to be 90% of its parent div, which is the container. Alright. Okay, background, we're going to make it light, light gray. Okay, and the height, let's make the height 400 pixels. And we're going to have a margin on the top and the bottom of 20. And then the left and right will be auto, because we want that in the center as well. And then overflow, you want to make sure that you do auto and not hidden, because if you did hidden, once the shouts break out of that div, you won't be able to get to them. You won't have a scroll bar, so you want to have overflow auto. Alright, so let's just check that out. Alright, so next we want to do the actual shouts themselves, which we gave a class of shouts for each list item. And we don't want any bullets, so let's do list style none. Alright, and then we're going to do padding of 8 and a border bottom 1 pixel. Let's do a semi-light gray and dotted. Did I mess up somewhere? Oh. No, I didn't. Class of shout. Oh. I need to change this to shout. Alright, so that looks good. Let me fix that lowercase m. It doesn't look good. Alright, and for the date, we have the date inside of a span tag. So what we want to do here is just say class shout span. Alright, and then I'm going to just change the color to lighter gray. Alright, that looks good. So the last area we have to do is this input area. And that's an ID. Input. Okay, we're going to give that a width of 90% and a minimum height of 80 pixels, and the margin is going to be auto, and padding we'll do a actually no, we don't want, we'll set that to 0 for now. Alright, so let's do the actual input fields themselves. Alright, so we'll say input. Now I want to focus, I want to get only the text inputs. I don't want the button, the submit. So in here, we're just going to put in type. Yeah, type equals text. Alright, and I'm going to set the height of the text boxes to 25 pixels, and a width, I want to set it to 48%, because there's 2 of them, but we're going to have some padding, so we need to make up for that. That's why we're not doing a straight 50%. So padding, we're going to do 3 pixels everywhere, and then a margin bottom, which will be 20 pixels, and we're going to put in a border of dark gray. Alright, so that's good for the text. Let's check that out. Alright, so that looks good. Next we'll do the button. So input input dot shout button. Alright, so we're going to give it a padding of 5 pixels and a margin on the bottom 20 pixels, and let's see, we'll do a width. We want the width to expand across the entire parent div, and then margin we're going to do 10 on the top and bottom, and then auto for the left and right. Alright, so that looks good. Let's give it a little more padding underneath the button here. Or I'm sorry, margin. Shouts height. Alright, I think I have to edit this height. Let's do 450. No. Container, let's try that. Nope. Let's make the container a little bigger, 500. $550. Huh, I don't know why this, oh, well, that's not going to work. I'm not sure why this isn't, oh, alright, there we go. Let's try 650. A little smaller, 630. Alright, there we go, that's good. Alright, so that about does it. Last thing I want to do is I want to add a media query so that these input boxes stretch 100% when they're when this is at a certain width. We'll do 768, so that'll be tablets and mobile devices. So at the bottom of the CSS file, I want to put in a media query. Alright, so we'll say at media only for screens, and we're going to do max width 768. Alright, and then in here we're going to get I want this input text. Okay, and then in here we're just going to say width 98%. Okay, so now if we go back, now that looks a lot better. Alright, so looks like we have the interface. One more thing I want to do is add the error. Actually, you know what? We'll do that in the next video. I want to add an error if we don't fill in these fields, but I guess that could be part of the PHP video. Alright, so there's our interface. Next, we will create the database using PHP MyAdmin.